make a move in the ring. You can hit me with a word you fling.
Okay, it's the post-fight podcast. It is July 23 in Hong Kong. I'm your host, Nicholas Atkin from South China Morning Post, scmp.com/MMA. As usual, I'm joined by JHK, John Hyon Cove in Korea, and we got Chris Edwards-Bailey in Kowloon. We're going to break down UFC Fight Island 3, Darren Till v. Robert Whittaker, huge main event. Guys, I'm just going to straight up ask you for your predictions. We'll start with you, Chris. Who are you picking?
Oh, this is a tough one, but as a Scouser, as a man from God's own city, Liverpool, I have to big up my boy Darren Till. I think it's going to be big fight, 5 rounds. It's going to go the distance, and I think Darren Till's going to win it 3-2, and I think he's going to get a knockdown in the second and the fourth.
Very specific. John, what do you think?
I'm going to have to go against that and take Robert Whittaker, the former champ. Man, I feel that Robert Whittaker, he's coming off, a devastating knockout loss. He's probably more driven than ever to come back and win a fight. And this is the wrong fight for Darren Till. Whittaker, I feel like all around, he's just more diverse than Till. Till, Dan Hardy did a great breakdown on Till, saying that, he's very basic in his striking arsenal, but the basics he does very well, and I agree with that. But the diversity and the angles and the movement of Whittaker is going to be a lot of problems for Till. Till's going to be in the fight, I'm not saying it's going to be a dominant performance, but I could see a late stoppage in this fight for Whittaker, and he's going to earn that title shot, because it seems like the title shot is up for grabs, and I could see the winner of this fight taking that opportunity and running with it. If I'm thinking the UFC, I think the UFC wants Till to win, but I don't care about the UFC, and I'm going to take Robert Whittaker in this fight. He's loose as a goose, and he's going to loosen that neck of Darren Till and take him out.
Well, my dream is I just really want Israel Adesanya's prediction he made about 2-3 years ago, where he said Darren Till is the Vegeta to his Goku. They're going to fight twice for the middleweight championship. They're going to fight once for the light heavyweight championship, and they're going to push each other and make each other better. And there's nothing more I could wish for. I mean, to tell you the truth, until Adesanya beat Whittaker, Whittaker was actually my favorite UFC champion. I love him. I think he's got a great personality. I actually think he's really down to earth and still also somehow got this absolute superstardom to him. He's an absolute killer and comes across as a nice guy. I think he does it all. And as well, he has the absolute star power in Australia. And I think a lot of people forget how popular he is in Australia.
The only concern I have about Robert Whittaker is that he's been through a lot of adversity in the last 6 months to a year, in his personal life. And that could maybe affect him in the fight, but also it could propel him in that fight, and I feel like it's going to propel him. He's going to come out on top, and he's going to have a crazy post-fight speech, and everybody's going to be back on the Robert Whittaker train after this fight. But I love Till too at the same time, man. I love his attitude. I love his post-fight speeches are some of the best in the game. But man, I feel skill for skill, Whittaker has just been in there with just too many killers, and he's beat Yoel Romero twice. Come on, if he could beat Yoel Romero twice, I'm thinking he could beat Darren Till once. So that's why I'm gonna go with the what's his name? Bobby Knuckles. I love that name, Bobby Knuckles.
Do you see it going to do you think it'll be a decision, or do you think Whittaker's going to get the finish?
I think Whittaker is going to get the late finish, probably around the 3rd or 4th round. But I also could see Darren Till getting the finish too. But if he does get that finish, it's going to be early. I feel like if Darren Till gets a finish, it's going to be early. He's going to clip him. He's going to start fast. His last fight against Kelvin Gastelum, he had a lot of anxiety and everything, and I'm feeling like he's over that, and he's going to come out firing. Pistons are going to be pumping for Darren Till, and all Robert Whittaker has to do is weather that storm and have good movement in the beginning of the fight, and then once he gets moving and grooving, I feel like he's going to take over and finish the fight in the 3rd or 4th round.
John, do you think if Whittaker wins, the UFC would be keen to book that rematch with Adesanya, given how one-sided it was last September, I think it was, in Melbourne?
No, I don't think that they would give Robert Whittaker an immediate title shot. If Till wins, I think that they would give Till immediate title shot because they love giving Till title shots, right? We've seen it. They love giving him big fights and yeah, and there's it's clear why they would want him to have big fights. He represents the UK. They need a big UK star. They like to have UK champions. He's a big personality. He's great on the mic. And him and Adesanya pre-fight hype would be pretty amazing. So if he wins, yes, I could see him getting a title shot with the Costa fight up in the air right now. If Whittaker wins, I don't see it happening. I could see them going with maybe even Jared Cannonier, giving him the title shot, because he's kind of like a dark horse sitting there. So, what do you think, Chris? You think Whittaker could get a title shot?
I think this is actually really interesting because with Whittaker winning, it does open up the possibility of a title shot. But then as well, you have someone really marketable. And what we also have to remember is Australia and New Zealand right now are pretty COVID clear. It looks likely they're going to have a travel bubble. And if you look at their sports, their rugby and their Aussie rules, they're filling out stadiums and they've got full stadiums. So Whittaker might actually be more useful to the UFC to headline an event in Australia where they can fill a big rugby stadium or a cricket stadium or whatever they want. You know what? I just can't get this idea out of my head. I think if Whittaker wins this, I think he'll probably have another fight until he gets Adesanya. I keep saying to my friends, and they keep laughing at me, I say, if Whittaker loses, you know who I'd love to see him fight? I'd love to see Woodley come up and fight him. And I don't know why that just sticks in my head. I feel like it'd be a good fight. Two people who've lost 2 fights in a row. Maybe the loser gets cut. I don't know.
Well, Tyron Woodley's going to fight Colby Covington, right, John? Isn't that what's going to be in the mix, apparently, according to Dana White? Well, let's not get into that anyway. Why don't we just let's get back onto this card? We got to preview a bunch of fights, Chris. Yeah. Let's talk about the co-main, the trilogy, Mauricio Hua and Little Nog. John, I'll start with you. Where does your heart lie? Where does your head lie? Because this dates back to Pride, doesn't it? A lot of fan interest in this fight.
Yeah, this is a throwback fight for sure. And Little Nog, he should have retired like 5 years ago. And he's just been sticking around, winning a fight, losing a fight, and pretty much coming up big when he's underestimated. And this could be his opportunity to come up big because I feel like he is the underdog in this fight against Shogun. Shogun has been showing glimpses of his, prime in his last couple of fights, and it doesn't seem like he's slowing down too much unless he's facing one of the top 5 guys. But when he's getting into that top 10, top 15 range, he can hang with the big boys. And I feel like that is what we're going to see. We're going to see Shogun go in there and do what Shogun does against Little Nog, because Little Nog's chin is suspect, and Shogun's going to test it, and it's going to be a first-round finish. I don't see this fight lasting past the 3-minute mark of the first round.
Chris, what are you going for?
Well, here's the question. I'm actually going to disagree, but not on the result. I think Shogun is going to win. Just on the method, I think Shogun, it's going to be a third-round knockout. I'm not sure if Shogun has the power that he used to. Still, Shogun, to me, is probably my favorite ever fighter. He's a great fighter. This goes back to, I think, Critical Countdown back in 2005 and Pride. Big Nog, I believe, hasn't fought in about 5 or 6 years. He's been retired, and Little Nog is his twin. So it shows you how much Little Nog has really pushed his body onwards. And yeah, I think Shogun's going to just have too much for him. He's 6 years younger than him. And I really think Shogun is probably going to knock him out in the third, probably referee stoppage, probably raining punches from above. It is a bit of a question why we are getting this trilogy, considering Shogun is 2-0 up. So it does raise some questions. But, particularly if you're a fan of Brazilian mixed martial arts or you are Brazilian, this is a kind of a legends matchup in effect. Arguably 2 of the best ever Brazilians to done it, and we get to see who rides out into the sunset.
Yeah, it's a little bit of fun, isn't it? And it's the final Fight Island card, a good way to go out. Continuing the throwback theme, John, we got Fabricio Verdum, former heavyweight champ. He's going to be welcoming Alexander Gustafsson to the heavyweight division, former light heavyweight contender who came up short against John Jones twice. How do you think Alex the Mauler is going to do going up?
That's a very good question. He's returning after a decent break, and he's going up to heavyweight, which means he doesn't have to cut weight, and maybe he's going to be more effective at that weight. We don't know yet, but what we know is that Verdum, he's 42 years old. He's riding a 2-fight losing streak. He came back off that long suspension from USADA and was looking really bad against Olenek. I don't know. I don't see Verdum lasting very long against Gustafsson. I think that this fight will end pretty quickly too. I think that Gustafsson is gonna probably chase around Verdum most likely, because he's not gonna go to the ground with Verdum, and I don't think this fight is gonna go to the ground. Gustafsson's wrestling defense is very good, so I don't see Verdum taking him down. So they're gonna bang it out on the feet, and if they do that, Gustafsson is gonna piece him up pretty easily. It's gonna be a clinic. I think that it's gonna be a fairly one-sided fight. And Verdum, I don't know what you do with him after this, because this will be 3 in a row, and he's 42 years old, and he's probably not in the best of terms with the UFC. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I got Gustafsson early with a TKO finish.
Chris, you seeing it's for Gustafsson
totally
as well?
I agree. I think Gustafsson's going to piece him up on the standing. Verdum's really only hope is if he can catch him with something. That's really the only possibility. His jiu-jitsu is fantastic. But I think Gustafsson's takedown defense is good enough. I think he's not going to fall for any tricks like that. I think he's going to control the distance. And actually, to anyone out there watching this fight, Verdum at one point was an absolute killer at heavyweight. Fantastic fighter. And I just think this shows how much maybe the sport has moved on or time has left behind Verdum. But it's a great fight. I mean, there is an argument to say, even just going through these 3 fights on this card, out of those 6 fighters, 5 of these guys will probably end up in the Hall of Fame.
It is a legends matchup, and I wanted to get your thoughts, both of you. Let's say Alex wins. He gave a slight hint that, he wants to go for the title. I imagine it'd be a bit further down the road, but can you see him hanging around in this division? Is he good enough to win the heavyweight title? John, we'll start with you.
I think he is. I think that it will take him some time to get his body used to the weight and moving around at that weight, and that he needs cage time, against the best guys in the division. And he's going to win a few and he's going to lose a few, but I could see him, in a couple of years, maybe contending. I don't think it's going to happen like real quick, but this fight is going to tell us exactly where he's at. This is a perfect fight to enter the heavyweight division with, I think. I feel like Verdum has a big name, so a lot of people are going to watch it. And then if he beats him, he just puts another guy on his resume, and then this will propel him into a better fight. Most likely a good stylistic fight for himself. I would like to see him fight, if he does win this, and if he's still around, I'd like to see him fight Stefan Struve and see what happens with that. 2 tall, long monsters chasing after each other with those limbs. It'll be fun to watch. But yeah, I could see him, getting up there and possibly challenging if everything works out, with his cards, that are dealt to him. I can see it happening.
Well, Chris, why don't I pose it to you a different way? Let's say John Jones doesn't come back for a couple of years because he's holding out for more money, and as he says, he wants to get everyone paid. Does that maybe tempt Alex Gustafsson maybe to go back to like heavyweight?
I don't think so. I think he's going to stay at heavyweight for at least 2 or 3 fights. Might see him move back down. But when you stop cutting weight, it does seem to get harder to cut that weight again. And I actually think the heavyweight division, there's a lot of fights that are really, really interesting for him. And it is kind of a division for the taking with Miocic and Cormier in their latter years. I don't know if Gustafsson is good enough to beat a Blades or an Ngannou. But I definitely think he has such exciting fights with a Volkov, a Sakai would be a really interesting fight. And then even moving up from there, I would love to see him fight Overeem or Rosenstrike. I think they would be really fun matchups.
Well, maybe we'll leave it to see if Alex actually wins this fight this week, and we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves, guys. But we do have plenty of other fights to talk about. Carla Esparza against Marina Rodriguez. John, I'll start with you. Give me your prediction for this one.
Well, this is a very difficult fight to pick. You got Marina Rodriguez. She's undefeated in the UFC, and two of her fights have went to a draw. She's beaten Tisa Torres, which is actually a pretty decent win by decision, and she also beat Aguilar, Jessica Aguilar, and she's a former champion in another division. So it shows you that she does have a very high skill set, but I don't think it's going to be enough to defeat the former champion in Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza has like a very tricky style, and she's very relentless with her wrestling. And this fight will probably end up being a fight on the ground. And if you've seen Marina Rodriguez's last fight against Cynthia Calvillo, she wasn't very good on the ground. And I think Carla Esparza takes it to the ground and drowns her basically for 3 rounds. I don't see a finish coming in this fight, but I see Carla Esparza doing really well in the wrestling and the grappling against Rodriguez. Yeah, so I'll take Carla Esparza by split decision. It's going to be close.
And Chris, the Cookie Monster, former champion, she says another win here gets her back in the title conversation. What do you think?
I totally agree with her. I mean, she's ranked number 7. She's just outside. I think this probably gets her just about into the top 5 in an amazing division. I love Carla Esparza, and I actually think this whole fight, it's just going to be fight IQ. I think Carla is just more well-rounded, maybe a little bit less athletic than she used to be, but she's so well-rounded, and I think she's just going to use her nous. And she's fought almost everyone in the division, Carla. And I really like her. I love her. I think she's bubbly. I think she's infectious. And I think she's got a good head on her.
All right, let's move on again. We've got Paul Craig, Scotland's own Paul Craig against... this is going to be a tough one to pronounce. I'm sorry, John. I'm sure you know it more than me. Gadzimurad and Tigulov. Where does your heart lie with this one, John?
I have no idea, but I'm going to take the guy that, his name sounds like a dinosaur. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I don't know the guy but the thing about him is that he's lost his last 2 fights in the UFC by TKO, and Paul Craig is a wild man, and he comes in with a wild style. So unless what's his name? Gulov comes in swinging wild and catches Paul Craig, I don't really see him beating Paul Craig. Paul Craig is just a little bit more experienced and a little bit more battle tested in the UFC, and it has more ways to finish the fight. And Paul Craig, he's traded wins and losses, I think, in his last like 6 or 7 fights, and his last fight was a draw with Shogun Hua. So he's due for a win. So I'm taking Paul Craig.
Chris, how about you?
I have to go with Paul Craig. I think this is actually a very, very obvious fight. I think the 5'11" fighter against the 6'3". Paul Craig is never in any of his wins. I don't even think in any of his losses has actually gone the distance. And I mean, particularly for a guy going up to heavyweight now, he's fought a light heavyweight. He's gone heavyweight sometimes. And I mean, when you actually look at it, for a heavyweight, especially at 6'4", to have 11 submissions and 1 knockout is fantastic. And I think that's how it's going to finish. It's going to be a 2nd or 3rd round submission.
All right, well, there are 6 fights on this main card. The opener is Alex Cowboy Oliveira, always fun, isn't he, against Peter Sabota, who's been out for a while. John, where do you think this one's going to go?
I'm taking Cowboy Oliveira. I always take Cowboy Oliveira against a guy that has been out of action for a while. The reason why is because Cowboy Oliveira, he's very, very active, and a guy that's very active is very dangerous. And his comfortability in the cage is at all-time high. He's coming off actually a win, because before that win, he was on a 3-fight losing streak, so he had to win. And I feel like he's riding that momentum against Peter Sabota, and I don't think Peter Sabota should be taking this fight against Cowboy Oliveira, but, it's Fight Island, so you don't have no options. You just take what you can get. So I could see Cowboy Oliveira finishing this fight. He's due for a finish, and this is a perfect fight for him to get that finish. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be a difficult fight. But yeah, Cowboy Oliveira on top. I could see that happening easy, like 2nd, 3rd round.
Chris, any arguments for Sabota here, or is this going to
Yeah,
be Cowboys?
actually, I'm going to go the other way around. Actually, I think if there's an underdog on the main card to go after, I think it is actually Peter Sabota. Oliveira's started to get older. He's fought everyone. He's just outside that elite, and I think me and John can't agree on everyone on the main card, can we? We've got to have some discussion up there. And I mean, if there was one that I'd have a bet on myself or I'd tell someone to throw onto an accumulator, it would be Peter Sabota. I think he's a very, very dangerous guy. I mean, 10 years ago, back when he was in the UFC, it didn't really click for him. This time around, he has done pretty good. I mean, he lost his last fight against Leon Edwards, but Leon Edwards is a title challenger or a near title challenger. And I actually think Peter Sabota is just going to catch Cowboy at some point.
All right, well, there's a whole host of prelims. I don't know where we begin. I think there are 9 in total. Is that correct, guys? I think we should talk about this one, though, like the main prelim, because it's a great story. Khamzat Chimaev against Rhys McKee. A whole lot of backstory to this. Chimaev made his debut in the UFC last week with one of the few 10-7 rounds we've ever seen in the UFC, completely destroyed John Phillips, Welsh veteran. He asked for another fight. He's going to hang around in Fight Island. Dana White said, sure. Who did they come up with? Rhys McKee, Cage Warriors standout. Chris, I know you got a lot of love for Rhys. Why don't we start with you? Can you see any way that Rhys McKee might stop the steamrolling Khamzat Chimaev? This guy has got a lot of hype behind him. He's with Ali Abdelaziz. He's been likened to the new Khabib. What do you think?
Well, I've said to people since day one, do not have the fast turnaround. It's not going to work out for you. And I mean, I was Rhys McKee, I wish I would have fought him the same day as his last fight, because I think this is going to be a really, really tough matchup. This is arguably, well, we've got another one on the card, another debut in the UFC, but this is one of the hardest debuts in the UFC we will actually ever see. I mean, the Northern Irishman, Rhys McKee's done everything he could in Cage Warriors, but I just think Chimaev is on a different level. I think he's going to out-wrestle him, outwork him, just old-school Dagestani handcuff, punches on the floor, and I'd be surprised if this goes the distance.
Skeletor, as he's known, has had 3 straight finishes in Cage Warriors, John, but given the way Chimaev performed and given everything we've heard about him, he's sparring with Alex Gustafsson, who is a heavyweight, and Chimaev considers himself a welterweight. But that says a lot, doesn't it, that he wants this guy to be his main sparring partner. And there's videos going around social media of him dropping Gustafsson in sparring. It's crazy. Where do you see this one going?
Yeah, I see him going to the ground and just dominating on the ground. You know, I don't think he's gonna sit there and give Rhys a chance in this fight. So he's gonna go for that takedown and maul him, pummel him. He's actually, Gustafsson is the mauler, but I think Chimaev is the mauler. You know, that's what he's known to do, and that's what he's going to do. But one glaring, I guess, thing that you need to remember is that every fighter that has come back on short notice, like Chris says, hasn't won their fight, and it doesn't matter how much of a favorite you are. Anything could happen in a fight, and this could be that time where something is broken. You know what I mean? Like, this streak is broken. But I'm gonna go with the sure money, and I'm gonna take Khamzat. Man, this guy, he is a massive prospect. You know, people are already talking about he's gonna be a UFC champion. You know, but come on, slow your roll, pump the brakes. We've only seen him fight one time against John Phillips. All right, so. Don't get too wild on him.
The only issue I actually have with this fight that seems quite odd is because Chimaev for John Phillips middleweight. I'm just wondering how easy is it going to be to cut all that weight in such a small amount of time. That's my only issue going into the fight is will he actually make the 171? I think he has to make 171 on Friday, because that's just seems really odd, because usually if you go into a weight cut, you'll drop close and then you'll do the last 5-7 pounds in the last 48 hours. So it must be one hell of a weight cut, but at least he's in the right part of the world, because I guess he can just put on a hoodie and go for a jog outside, and he'll lose a decent amount of water weight out there in the desert.
Yeah, let's see if the Swedish sensation via Chechnya keeps rolling. but there's plenty of other fights to talk about on these prelims, aren't there, guys? I'm going to let you take your pick. Tell everyone, what should they have their eyes on early on before the main card starts? John, we'll start with you.
Just like Reese McKee, Tanner Boser, he's returning after just getting a knockout finish, I believe 3 weeks ago. So he's also coming back on short notice. What happened was with him is he won his fight, went back home, was in 2 weeks quarantine, got out of 2 weeks quarantine, went to training for 3 days, and then got on a plane to Vegas to go to Abu Dhabi. So imagine his schedule for the last couple of weeks. And he's taking Justin Tafa's spot. Justin Tafa was injured, so he can't face Pascal. And I think Tanner Boser is a guy that people need to start noticing. You know what I mean? I think that he's going to come in here and get a quick finish again. Pascal is going to be the guy that wants to stand and trade with him. And Boser might be a little bit better on the feet and just all around just a better fighter. And I think Boser is someone that people are going to take notice, and he's going to get on the streak. He's not like the top 15 level yet, but he's a decent prospect. Guy coming up in the heavyweight division. Another fighter that I see that we need to keep tabs on is Nathaniel Wood. He's coming off that loss to John Dodson, and he's one of the best coming out the UK at bantamweight. He's up there with Jack Shore and Brent Johns. He's in that little small exclusive club, and putting him on the first fight of the night is like an insult. But, it's probably good for him because he gets to fight like way earlier than anybody else, you know what I mean? And then just go home, just go back to the hotel and relax. So I see him coming out and putting on a signature performance against a guy that's debuting against him on short notice. So Nathaniel Wood, Tanner Boser. And then one last one is the fight with Betch Correa and Penny Kianzad. I think that's going to be a very good fight. Both those girls are not really into the wrestling too much, and they're going to stand and bang. And I think that we might see a new contender coming into the mix with Penny if she beats Betch Correa, because Betch Correa is ranked right now. I think Penny has the skills to beat her, and if she can beat her, she'll probably be ranked like number 14 or 13 come Monday morning. So that's what I'll be looking out for on the prelims.
Chris, do you want to weigh in any of those, or have you got any other fights that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, well, just with so many fights, I've got a few fights. I'm going to cover be a bit biased and cover a few of the British fighters. We'll start off with the main event of the prelims with Jai Herbert versus Francisco Trinidado. Another Cage Warriors champion coming over to the UFC for his debut, and I actually think he's a fantastic fighter, really skillful. But this is actually a really, really tough debut against someone with a great stand-up game, great takedowns, and I think it's just absolutely thrown him to the fire. I think his only loss, Jai Herbert, was actually when he fought for the belt, which I think in Cage Warriors he fought for the belt after 4 fights, maybe, and then came back 2 fights later and won the belt again. From the Black Country, fighting out Wolverhampton, so big that up.
What a great name, huh? The Black Country Banger. What a name.
That's it, isn't it? So I like that. He's a slight underdog according to the odds here, but I think he has a good chance. But I think no matter what, this is going to be a fantastic, fantastic fight. And at the age of 32, I think he still actually has quite a decent amount to give to the UFC. And I really think if he actually can finish Trinidado, this might be the end of Trinidado, and we might see Jai Herbert go for a push to get ranked over the next couple of fights. And then moving further down the card, might as well bring it up. We've got 2 guys out of Team Carbon. We've got Tom Aspinall fighting Jack Collier. We've got Mike Grundy versus Evloev, both actually from the Lancashire town of Wigan. So big up the pie eaters. Go ahead. Tom Aspinall is going against Jake Collier, a heavyweight. Tom Aspinall is quite a really, really good boxer and is quite famous for training with Tyson Fury. So he's obviously pretty good with his hands. And I think it's just a really interesting matchup because Collier, I know his name doesn't sound like it, but he's actually of Cuban extraction. So it will be very interesting to see because, Cubans are famous for, ballet, boxing, and wrestling is what they're famous for, and baseball. So it will be interesting to see if Collier goes for a more wrestling-based approach or whether he actually decides to stand up against Aspinall. And it will be very interesting to see the Fury fists versus the Cuban fists. So I think that's going to be an absolutely great fight. Anyone who just wants a bit of stand-up, wants to avoid the wrestling, that could be a good one. But Jake Collier could ruin the party. And then Mike Grundy versus Evloev. I think, is this Grundy's debut in the UFC?
No.
Well, anyway, out Team Cowbon, and I think this is a good fight. Both of them with fairly good records, but I'd actually go with Evloev in this one.
Chris, can you tell us the stat? You've been reminding us the last couple of weeks. A lot of Brits aren't there on these Fight Island cards. Where do we stand? What was the win-loss column on that?
I wanted to say the last time I worked it out, I think I had it. It was either 7-6 or you were at 6-6. I'd actually have to get my stats out to double check. And I
Bring it on Sunday for the recap, please.
Yeah, and even with more British fighters on this card, and to tell you the truth, looking at the card, and some of the Brits have easy fights, some of the Brits have very, very hard fights. If I actually had to bet on something, I'd bet on Team UK finishing with a .500 record.
Why are they raiding Cage Warriors so much? Is it just because of logistics? Is it easier to get fighters over to Abu Dhabi from Britain? Is that a factor?
Yeah, it does seem it. I think as well, when you have a lot of fighters coming from one place, the UK, and actually the vast majority of them being based in the north of England, it's probably really easy because you can probably stick them all on one plane and fly them all over together. So probably is part logistically. But also right now, if you look back to the very early days of the UFC and the early days of MMA, the early 2000s up to Michael Bisping, there was a lot of really, really good UK talent, even fighting over in Pride in the early days of the UFC. We had a lot of Brits going over. And then it did seem to dry up in the late round about 2010, and over the last 2 or 3 years, it seems like the UK has really developed the game and actually got some good wrestling coaches over there, because that is something we do tend to struggle with still.
John, have you been noticing the rise of the UK talent again? Is it something you like to see? I know you speak to all these guys for Kumite TV or your YouTube channel. I guess you're pumped to see a lot of these guys get a chance because they do deserve it. The talent is there.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent there, and even Bellator has a lot of UK talent fighting for them too. It's they're all competitive, and they just need the opportunity. And when you look at Cage Warriors, they're kind of similar to LFA in the US. It's a feeder league for the UFC, and a lot of the champions go over to the UFC directly. And I feel like the UFC has a good relationship with Cage Warriors. And the guy that owns Cage Warriors, Boylan, he also manages a lot of the fighters that crossed over to the UFC. So it's pretty easy to deal with that type of, guy with that much power. So, Cage Warriors have done well. You see Connor, he was a champion in Cage Warriors. So I feel like that's when they kind of opened their eyes a little bit more. And once Connor came over and they just started swiping up talent, and we're seeing it, And I'm happy. I'm happy for all of them, and good luck to all of them. All the best for all the fighters. But yeah, it's like Fight Island has done something really good for the European talent out there, and and they're gonna take advantage of it. This is the time to take advantage of it, so they need to.
Well, it's a stacked card. It should be a fun way to bow out of Fight Island. And obviously, we don't know what's going to happen now with the UFC, because are they actually going to be able to put on cards in Las Vegas? John, Chris, do you think they're just going to be coming back to Fight Island soon?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they like the setup that they have on Fight Island, and they don't have as much stress, I believe, with the testing and all of that stuff. So, why not? Why not have Fight Island? International talent with the with the combination of U.S. North American talent. Let's just keep it going. But Las Vegas is Las Vegas, man. That's the fight capital of the world. They want to go back. That's their home. That's Dana's home. So
isn't Dana buying a home in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island around there? He said he's looking for a house because he feels he's going to have to stay there for a while.
Why don't he just buy a suite or the penthouse at the hotel?
Yeah.
I'm sure they give it to him, but they rent it for free.
Why buy a house?
Anyway, it's good to get your predictions, guys, for this preview. Let's all catch up again on Sunday and see if you were correct, and we'll see if Chris's prediction of 0.500 for the UK athletes comes true. It should be a great card. Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, JHK MMA, Chris EB_MMA. Go check these guys out. I am Nick at SCMP. Please like and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're everywhere. John, thanks again. Chris, thanks again, and we'll see you all again after a while. Cheers.
Hey guys, Sasha Platnikoff here, letting you know to tune in to SCMP Post Fight for all your weekly martial arts news.